Hey everyone, welcome back to another video on Sketchblocks. I'm Matt with Converge, and today we want to take a look at the next topic in my list on Sketchblocks. We've already looked at the basic creation and usage, how to use them for belts and pulleys, gears, as well as linkages. And now I want to talk about how we can translate that into solid motion while still staying inside of a part file. So what I have on the screen is a supplied file, Sketchblock Parts with Motion. We're going to talk about some of the pluses and minuses and the downfalls that you need to look out for if you try to apply this technique. The first thing that I want to do is expand Boss Extrude 1, and I want to show Sketch 1, then Fit to Screen. What we can see here is a sketch block that contains a wheel and a swing arm and a separate linkage and a shock. So a basic representation of a motorcycle or some sort of wheeled vehicle, mountain bike, could be anything. But what we want to focus on is the fact that I can grab the axle, I can move it up, and have that solid part rebuild. So this is a very critical step in the sketchblock process if you want to replicate that mechanical motion. However, there are some downfalls that we need to talk about. The first of which is this only works if you have Instant 3D turned on. If you turn off Instant 3D, you can't manually drag these sketches because that's how that functionality works. If you have an underdefined sketch of, say, a circle and you extrude it into a cylinder, Instant 3D lets you change the diameter of that or change the extent that you extrude to. However, if you turn that off, you can't do that anymore. So you have to have this Instant 3D turned on to be able to drag your sketch blocks around when you're not editing them. The next thing is, in this case, you'll notice that most of my other sketch geometry is converted to a construction line. Now there's a good reason for that. In the case of our linkage here, we have a lot of overlapping parts. And what happens when you have overlapping parts? You end up having overlapping lines. So if we go back to this original sketch, Sketch 1, and I take, for example, this original line and convert it back, and I take the swing arm and convert it back and come out, you'll notice that I get an error. And what happens is SOLIDWORKS doesn't know exactly which regions we want to select, so therefore some of the features end up failing. What we have to do in this case is come back into these features and manually select the regions we want to extrude. So for Boss Extrude 1, it's just those three bosses. For Boss Extrude 2, it's going to end up being this extra region here and making sure that we are combining it with the selected bodies and then say OK. Now on the surface, this might look great. However, as we start to move parts around, we get into a situation again where that fails because as lines tend to cross, we're going to again run into an issue where we might not have a closed region, or we might have introduced a new closed region, and SOLIDWORKS doesn't know how to handle that. So again, that's one of the negatives or one of the drawbacks to this process is you really have to be careful and make sure that it applies to the type of geometry that you're using to make sure that you don't have a situation like this where some of the parts fail and some of the parts end up not working for this type of motion. I found that it works really good with cylindrical type parts, things that end up being revolved in nature like the shock or a cylinder or something to that effect. So it's able to be used pretty well in those scenarios. In cases like this where we're dealing with linkage, for the most part it works pretty well, except for a situation like this where we have these linkages and these different pieces that overlap each other. So in these cases, it really makes the most sense to do these sketch blocks and create an assembly of individual parts from it. But hopefully this gives you another available option to utilize sketch blocks, and certainly play around with it. See how it works for you. Make sure that Instant 3D is turned on and make sure that you just see what type of parts you design and how it can work for you. And as always, please check back in. We're going to carry on with this topic. We have a few more things that we want to cover. But if you guys have any questions, please shoot us a line and let us know, and we're happy to try to answer those for you.